How does your life change when your album becomes number one?
I met a guy called Seymour Stein who signs Madonna and the Ramones. He came and saw me play and said,
What's your take on all this AI-generated music?
I think it was Alex the Kid. He played me an AI track, but even at the time I was like, okay, it's over.
How did the blockchain came into your world?
If you have an opinion or a belief that is out of line with the country you live in, they can freeze your bank account or they can stop you from traveling or you no longer have access to social media.
I'm sure there's moments when you feel down. What's your mental game at this stage? Hey guys, my guest today is artist, producer, writer, and now people elevator.
Thanks, Anatoly. Nice to be here.
I like to start with a backstory. I know you're from England. Can you describe your childhood? How was growing up there?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of London, on the border between London and Hertfordshire. Really lovely family. I'm the first of three children. We're second generation British, so my grandparents were all from kind of scattered across Europe. It was a relatively peaceful and fun childhood. You know, we got to climb trees, ride motorbikes, cycle around the neighborhood with friends, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, like really couldn't ask for better parents and better siblings. And as we've gotten older, we've all just gotten closer and closer. And it's been a
Beautiful.
really great thing. Yeah.
When was the time that you realized you want to go to the music career? Because that plays a very important role in your life.
Yeah, I've always loved music. I've always responded to music. My mum said I was singing before I could talk, and I learnt my timetables from songs in the car. So I was always drawn to music. I started playing piano at 6 years old, and was started writing songs at 9, and by 11 I was in a recording studio for the first time. So it was
Wow.
really always something that I think prior to learning the piano, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then as soon as I kind of discovered instruments, it was always music.
How did that passion to music realized in your later life?
Yeah, so as a teenager, I kind of got some simple home recording equipment, a 4-track in those days. It was just before the computers really came in and matured. And so I was recording little ideas at home and was always trying to make it better and better. And then went to music school for production and composition. And again, there was just trying to make the recordings better and was writing lots of songs. And so when I came out of there, I set up my own studio and kind of built that a little bit over time. And I kind of was mentored at the time by a music producer who also did a lot of kind of writing for TV and film. And he was kind of a session guitarist from his background. And so I learned a lot through him and got better. And we would record artists together and develop artists together, and that's how I kind of learned my craft really.
Wow.
And through 10 years of hustling, basically, as I said, recording all sorts of different things from voiceovers to full bands to artists and whatnot. I got a job with an EDM band at the time called Pendulum, and I was doing some kind of mixing and editing for them, some Pro Tools work. And that album went to number one in the
Wow.
UK. Yeah, and so off the back of that, then I started working for some other artists in a similar field and on the same management company. And so yeah, there was like quite a lot of activity and other hit records and things going on. And I just thought, okay, there's got to be more than this little scene that I'm in. And I was doing quite a lot at the time. I was recording for EMI at Abbey Road. I had my own studio stuff, so there was like quite a lot going on. But at the same time, I'd been drawn a lot to American music, particularly rock and roll, Americana, that kind of stuff. And so I went to a music conference in the south of France called Midem.
Okay.
And there I met a guy called Seymour Stein, who was the vice president of Warner Music at the time. And he was a co-founder of Sire Records, who signs Madonna and The Cure and the Ramones. And he had an incredible career. So he came and saw me play. I was playing some shows in London after the conference, and he said, there's this festival that happens in America called South by Southwest, and if
Yeah.
you came, I think you'd meet lots of really interesting people there. And so I went and just had the time of my life in America, and ended up meeting a woman who became my manager at the time. When I eventually got back to the UK, I was just like, okay, that's definitely the place for me now. And so I eventually moved out to America. I thought I was going to be in New York. That's where really my kind of community was. But it was the only place I didn't really get work. And so the management was in Los Angeles. My sister was living in Los Angeles. And so I went there and, yeah, was basically in LA for 8 years.
Wow, beautiful. Going back to the story, the question I have is how does your life change in a day when your album becomes number one? Do you get like bunch of calls and people start to like harassing you?
Well, so I was kind of one person in a bigger team, right? So the real genius of that project was the guy Rob Swire, who it was Pendulum. It was a band, but it was essentially fronted by two friends, Rob and Gareth. And Gareth was the more kind of outgoing social one, and Rob is kind of the genius back in the studio doing all the mixing and that kind of stuff. So I was really supporting them.
I see.
um, and so I don't think things necessarily changed from one day to the next, but certainly there were people who saw that I had, worked on that record and reached out to me. There was a band called the Chemists, who I guess were in the similar genre, wanting to, achieve a certain success. They reached out to me for some songwriting, work, and yeah, there was various examples of things like that. I did some work for a group called Drum Sound and Bassline Smith. I helped them work on their single, which also did quite well. I forget exactly where it got to, but it was quite well received. And so, yeah, definitely, people were looking out for me. But the irony was, as much as I like drum and bass and appreciate a lot of EDM music, my background is more in performance based music, so rock, soul, jazz, that kind of stuff. And so it was ironic that my highest charting numbers were in the EDM space.
Yeah. Well, you never know where life takes you for sure. In your experience, since you worked with many successful bands, what is the difference between being the band that is, or the music that is number one from all the rest? Like, what are some of the attributes that allow them to excel?
There's a lot that goes into making a creative work a success, right? And some of it's luck, some of it is the marketing and the machine behind it, and just garnering enough support. But if you're focused more on the creative artistic side of things, there's a real craft to songwriting. Like at the end of the day, the song is really the meat and potatoes of the art. If the song's not good, you can put production around it and you can put marketing around it, and maybe it'll have some short-term success, but I don't think it will really, generally speaking, have any long tail success to it. So I think first it comes down to the songwriting, and then depending on the style of music and what really people connect to about that. If you ever hear an a cappella vocal of Michael Jackson or Freddie Mercury, I think two of the greatest singers, or pop singers at least, or rock and roll singers, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're phenomenal. It's just
Yeah.
undeniable, and you hear them on their own, and it's as compelling as hearing the full song.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case, certainly with a lot of music today, and even a lot of bands in those times in the 70s and 80s and stuff. Although I think because there was less computers there, no real computers in the 70s, people had to be able to deliver the goods, whereas now
Yeah.
you can just fix everything with a computer.
Beautiful. For people who are just starting out in the music world, you saw lots of people who are at the beginning. What are some of the most common mistakes you think those people make that will not allow them to propel forward?
I think it's really important to know what's important to you as a creator and what people resonate with about you, right? Because now the technology is so available, it's easy to get sucked into, engineering and producing and making beats and all of this kind of stuff. But maybe if you're a singer, um, even though it can be frustrating to have to get a producer and maybe an engineer to work with, actually, if you focus on being the best singer you can be and understand, what is it that people respond to about you as a singer, as a performer, I think that's better than being a jack of all trades. Which, I mean, I ended up, because I was kind of quite capable with some of these things. So I went from being, a singer and a musician to also getting into engineering and production and all these different things. And I've made it work, but there was a lot of banging my head against a wall. There was a lot of times where I was up late at night dealing with software installs and, hard drives and thinking, what am I doing? Like, I should be playing keyboards and not, doing this or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think that, listen, if you have the aptitude for it and you want to expand your skill set, then obviously, like, get as many skills under your belt as you can. But I think it's important to, yeah, focus on what really inspires you and what really drives you, and be as good as you can with
Okay.
that.
Um, since you talk about new technology, there's a lot of the conversations right now about AI writing music. So there's a Jay Z track where he just like somebody put some random words and it sounds like Jay Z.
You tell the young they can never become what they aspire to. Born in a cell with no one who can inspire you. Your highs are never as high as those that lie to you. Pretending that they live in.
First of all, what do you think is the future of that? And second of all, what's your take on all this AI generated music overall?
I don't claim to have a crystal ball, so I'm not going to try and predict the future. But I think it's quite worrying. I think this technology is still relatively early stage, and its capability is extremely impressive. And obviously, it's only going to get better and better. I think without copyright legislation or some kind of guardrails to protect people from being impersonated and all that kind of stuff, I think it's just going to kind of run rampant. And the other thing is, I mean, I think it was Alex the Kid, who's a pretty successful producer. He played me an AI track from a Google AI. I want to say like 6 years ago in LA, and I was, even at the time, I was like, okay, it's over. Like,
Yeah.
the computers are going to make incredible music, and that was then. So I think that. Listen, there's something for me, very beautiful and very magical about musicians playing together and the interplay that creates. And that's one of the things that I really love about music. And you can simulate it, and I've simulated it before, artificially. But again, it's I don't know. Maybe if it's just so creative, something that like humans would never think of. Maybe people would go to a concert to watch, a bunch of computers creating music.
Yeah.
But I don't see where the performance element is in that. So I think, again, from a performance point of view, from a live music point of view, I think there'll always be, there'll always be a market for that. I just don't see why you would want to go and see a hologram, and a bunch of computers. But although people do with the gorillas, right? So
Yeah.
who knows? As I said, I don't want to predict the future, but I do think that what's happening with AI is extremely disruptive. I don't want to say positive or negative, but I think it's going to change. It's going to change or impact rather. I think it's going to impact a lot.
I guess the question of people asking themselves, and I want to pose it to you to see what you're going to say. Would you listen to a track of, let's say, if Jay Z decides to have a track that is AI generated and it's all copywritten and it's amazing music? Would you still like download it and have an album on Spotify of music like that? Or would you like, no, this is not something I want to?
I'm open to assessing music on its own merit. So almost it doesn't matter where it comes from, But I think that, like, for me, a big part of the integrity of music is the lyrics and the quality of the lyrics. And Jay Z, I think it's as much about the beats as it is about his lyrics, right? He's kind of considered one of the top rappers and one of the top wordsmiths. And, I've seen footage of how, he writes it all in his head. He never writes it down. So he
Yeah,
goes into the booth and just slays,
yeah, yeah.
and that's super cool. So, if I was to listen to Jay-Z, part of it is responding to that he's got this swagger and he's got this kind of flow. And if it was generated by an I mean, it would be novel if they could replicate the same kind of lyrical prowess. But I wonder if that wasn't from him, then maybe it would feel a little less authentic.
I see. I'm having this same conversation in my mind with generative art, because right now you can create any art you want, and a lot of things on Instagram very quickly became generative art, and then it's very hard to distinguish. You see some Joe Biden dancing with the Pope, you're like, "Is that really happen?" And like, no, it didn't. But like now, these days, it's impossible to distinguish, and some of those arts are so beautiful that you're like, "Wow, I don't think that humans could ever think about any of that." And to me, on one point it's beautiful, on the other point I can see like this will be the default of the art in like few years.
Mm.
Everything online will be just digital art, and you won't like, there's no photos, there's no need anymore. You can just say Bradley dancing with Jay-Z, and there will be an image of you with Jay-Z, and then you'll post it online, and you don't have to take pictures anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I have been thinking about this a bit, but I'm unable to really draw meaningful conclusions from it, other than it's a very interesting time. I do think that it's really important that we have kind of self-sovereign identity and a way to verify data, as this kind of, you know digital age moves forward, so that we can protect kind of our freedoms and have a kind of agreed state, of truth, or of just events that people can refer to.
I listened to one of your talks about that actually in Bali. You talked about
Mm.
the blockchain, which is another interest of yours. You were talking about how decentralization is the move forward. If I understood your talk correctly, and there was like a bunch of cool Q&A.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about that before we continue with your story. How did the blockchain came into your world, and what's your take on everything that's happening there?
Yeah, so but basically, I kept hearing about Bitcoin over the years and didn't really understand what it was. The first time it was mentioned to me, I was like, "Oh, this is like digital money." Why would I didn't understand. But after coming around a number of times, I thought, okay, I need to really get my head around this. And then when I understood that blockchain basically provided an opportunity for people to exchange value directly with each other without the need for a bank or a central third party, I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And in 2017, I got pretty deep into the space, and then saw just how predatory the space was, and there was a lot of scams and a lot of kind of not so savory people, let's say,
Yeah.
opportunistically operating in that space. And so I started looking for what is something that I think is going to be really a long-term solution to this kind of value proposition of people being able to exchange peer-to-peer, in a way that's trusted, that's safe, that's scalable, that is going to work with regulatory compliance. And I eventually came across a project called Verus, which means
Okay.
truth in Latin,
Yep.
and which is something that has been built with those attributes in mind. So to be safe, scalable, decentralized, secure, trustworthy, all these kinds of things. And so, that space, as much as there's a lot of now awareness around it and hype around it, I would argue that it's still pretty early in its technical development, and certainly in terms of actual real world adoption
Yeah.
for things. And we need systems that actually decentralize and provision people's freedoms. Otherwise, it's going to become a kind of hybrid model that's like semi-centralized and basically gets abused again by large companies and governments.
For sure.
What's so dangerous about that abuse is because everything is digitized, it's not like, having, it's not like, decades ago where we're talking about manual record keeping and things
Yeah.
were slow to process. You only need to look at what's happened in, around the world last year, but I won't point necessarily examples, but, if you have an opinion or a belief that is out of line with the country you live in, they can freeze
Yeah.
your bank account, or they can stop you from traveling, or, they can, say, okay, you no longer have access to social media or whatever it is. And just, if you think about those things, oh, you no longer have access to, to sign a contract or to take out a loan, or whatever these things are. And then what's the difference between that and Nazi Germany, or pick your oppressive regime? So I think these things are actually potentially very threatening, and we need really robust systems that can help humanity in this way.
I completely agree with you. I think one of the examples you gave was about China in your talk,
Yeah.
how they already have like social score systems, and if you put that on a digitized level, so to do that will be so much easier. Any government with one click can just find all people with a low score and then just erase them from all the records, and then those people don't really exist and they won't have any opportunities anymore, which is very, very scary. 100% with you.
Yeah, super scary. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Let's turn to something more positive, I guess. I know that you make a big shift from music to coaching people on self mastery. How did that came to be? How did you decide to the switch?
So it's kind of in the background of my life, I was always experimenting with things, trying to be better, trying to, grow, whether it was overcoming insecurities, or it was, trying to be in better physical shape, or practicing meditation and trying to work on my mental health. And all of these things I've tried over the years in different ways. I was very athletic as a teenager. I used to do a lot of martial arts and played rugby and ride motorcycles and stuff like that. So I guess one big thing that kind of started me even further into that road of inquiry was when my father was diagnosed with cancer. I was so shocked because he was kind of like my hero and seemed to be in perfect health. He was a little overweight, but nothing that I was really shocked by hearing that news. And so I started researching a bit about food and nutrition, and saw what a massive impact that has on our overall health. And so started experimenting with veganism and vegetarianism and that kind of thing, and understanding what goes into producing food for mass consumption, particularly meat production and mass farming and things like that. And then, yeah, in 2018, I was kind of the blockchain market, had taken a nosedive. I had been quite active in that space, as I mentioned. I was kind of like looking for what was next, and in that period of uncertainty, I was really kind of working out quite committedly, and meditating. Those were two things that I was using to really keep my center. And the Grammys came around in 2019. There were some people that were over there. They were nominated for Song of the Year, and we were at one of these pre-parties for the Grammys. And I said, "Guys, it's so great that you're here, and up for this award." And they said, "It is great. We were just talking about you in the way over here. We kind of want what you've got. One of us has got a back problem. One of us has got no self-esteem. The other guy's always arguing with his partner. And you're here in Los Angeles. You're like the epitome of good health. You're riding motorcycles. You're kind of living the dream. And we want a bit of what you've got." And I said, "Wow, that's so interesting." And so started working with them and some others, and developing a framework because I really wanted genuinely to help people. Like, I've got a big heart, and really want to see others thrive and, you know, be fulfilled in their lives. And so I came up with this kind of two-pronged approach. First thing is, if you're not well, everything in your life suffers, right? So
Yes.
if you're physically unwell or you're mentally unwell, um, then that becomes an obstacle to everything else. So first thing is addressing your wellness, and so I consider somebody well if they're able-bodied and of able minds. They're not on drugs. You know, they can move around. They're of a positive disposition. You know, they're kind of
Yeah.
able to be themselves in the world. Then it becomes a question of, well, what do you want to do with your time? You know, what does a fulfilling life look like to you? How do you want to serve? All of that kind of stuff. And so then it becomes about lifestyle design. And so that's basically what my one-on-one coaching, that's how I work with people, is first to ensure that they're healthy and they're well and they can do whatever it is they want to do. And then what is it that you want to do? And by when do you want to achieve it? Because if you don't put a deadline around it, then it's just a
Yeah.
dream, you know. But if you say, you know, by the end of the year, I want to, you know, whatever, earn X amount of money, or be able to run a mile in such and such a time, or whatever your goal is, now we have something we can work towards.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's amazing work to be able to help people elevate their lives. You know, people come. Everyone's different, right? Everyone has different ideas of what a fulfilling life looks like. I mean, ultimately, I think all people want to be expressed and received, right?
Yeah.
People want to share what's in their heart, and they want to have it received with gratitude and grace.
Yeah.
But exactly what that looks like, I think, is different for everyone. So that's basically the overview of it.
I'm sure there's moments when you feel down, when you're like, okay, I'm get maybe not depressed, but at least feel like, okay, everything is not going well. How do you get yourself back up? What's your mental game at this stage?
Yeah, just to kind of almost rephrase your question, there was a wise woman once said to me, "Life is all about how you handle the transitions."
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, everyone can, when you're sailing, you know, it's good, it's easy. But so yeah, I mean, again, for me, meditation and exercise are two key things. And actually, just to speak a little bit about my wellness framework, because it's not rocket science, but it is super powerful. So I use meditation as my main kind of mental health strategy, exercise for, you know, physical wellness, but also nutrition, hydration, recovery, so getting enough sleep essentially, and purpose, like you said, having something to, you know, inspire you to work towards. And if you have those things, listen, things don't always go your way. Life throws us all curveballs, you know, and sometimes it can just feel brutal, like it just, you know, getting one after another. But to have that kind of a framework at least keeps you operating in a healthy and positive way. So I would say, you know, sometimes I find running as a great way to just, you know, it's just you against yourself. You're in nature. You know, you can run for half an hour. Just I listen to music when I run often. I feel like that's a great way to just kind of do something positive for myself, and you know, maybe alleviate some of that stress that I'm facing. And I also find that reaching out to support from you know, just people, like sharing with other people, um, I find as a powerful way to process things. And I've heard some people say, oh, you know, it's a sign of weakness if you share things, or you know, you can't kind of just process things on your own. But I would argue that actually to be vulnerable and to share with people is actually a sign of strength. And you can get perspectives from people and wisdom from people that, you know, you might not, you have a different life experience, you have a different perception of things, and so they give you, you know, wisdom essentially that you can
Yeah.
then incorporate into your perspective. And yeah, and I think that those are some of the ways that I kind of handle those tougher times.
Yeah, I noticed a pattern in myself, and actually now I'm breaking it as much as possible because I think that helps me to get out of any depressive episode. Our mind sometimes tells contradictive things to what we really need. So let's say when we're depressed, the mind says, just don't do things. Be by yourself. Don't talk to anybody. Just spend
Mm.
time by yourself, and then you start to like going on those vicious circles where exactly you need to do the opposite. You need to get out of the house, go talk to people, and you will feel better right away. But
Yeah.
I noticed all the time it says, well, I have a scheduled appointments. Well, cancel all your appointments today. Don't do anything. Sit at home and just think about your depression. And I think if we can get awareness that this is our mind telling us stories and we don't have to listen to that, it's not necessarily a source of truth. We're giving ourselves advice that doesn't work. Otherwise, we would not get like depressed episodes over and over again. That at least that helps me on a mental level.
Yeah, I was just watching part of this Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, and he was talking about how, he had a lot of things that would come up for him. I think his brother dying was one of these things, and family issues or whatever. And he was just like, I was so busy that I just had shit to do, and never let
Yeah,
myself get too distracted. Now, I think that there's something to be said for properly processing, these strong emotional events in our lives, so that they don't end up controlling us. Um, and I think we all owe it to ourselves, to look at ourselves in that way and do that work. But that being said, yeah, the life waits for no one, right? So you can
yeah,
spend a day processing this stuff, or you can spend a year processing it, or maybe you never process it, and then it just controls you for the rest of your life. So
yeah,
I think, like you said, having a purpose and having a something that you're working towards is very powerful.
yeah. Also, Arnold is, I think, the superhuman being just by default. This documentary is just crazy. When he's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna be the top bodybuilder of all times, and that he's like achieved that. Well, now I'm gonna be a leading star. Now I'm gonna be a politician. And he's just like one after another. He's just crazy, and people who they interview, they're like, yeah, he's the best. There's no better bodybuilder than him. There's no like better leading actor in that time frame as him. So he just achieved it all, which is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
he's an incredibly inspiring guy. I mean, I read his autobiography a few years ago and I loved it. And he seems to have a sense of humor that he takes to, I mean, he's obviously got an incredible work ethic, but he also seems to just kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, he approaches life in a very playful and magnanimous way. It's really inspiring to see.
Yeah, there's something to be said about not treating life too seriously. I think the people who do that are definitely happier than people who are treating life too seriously. 100%.
Yeah,
I can see that.
yeah. Yeah, somebody once said to me, if you're not laughing, then the joke's on you,
Yes,
basically.
it's exactly true. So currently you're working with Elevation Barn. How did you find that opportunity? And tell me a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah, so in 2021, I left Los Angeles and started traveling. And Bali had been a place that lots of people had kind of mentioned, and I wanted to explore. And I ended up in Bali after traveling for some time. And it was literally the first night out. So I'd been in Bali for 24 hours. I was at a charity dinner, and on the table next to me were this lovely couple, Will and Jana. And I ended up running into them a week later at a dinner that a friend, another music producer from Los Angeles, or actually a British music producer, but who I knew from New York and LA, invited me to. And Will and Jana were at this dinner as well. So I kept running into them, and they became friends. And their community in Bali was really lovely. A lot of the kind of green school parents who are a wonderful community. And so then we developed this friendship, and about a year later, I ran into Will again, and I said, "Hey, man, it'd been a couple of months. I'd been traveling again, and he had been traveling a bit." I said, "How's it going?" He said, "Yeah, it's great. Elevation Barn is now expanding, and we're looking for more coaches to come on to help us with that expansion. I said, okay, that's interesting. So we connected over it a bit, and he said, listen, if you're really serious about helping us with this, you need to really experience what we do and see if it's something that you want to align with. So I booked myself into a retreat, and I really loved it. I thought it was actually quite similar to what I was doing as a coach, because, as I said, my coaching is also about helping people get clear on their values and living a fulfilling life in accordance with their values and their passions. So we were very aligned on that front, and I liked that it kind of focused on the positive aspects of people's lives, and that there was this kind of strong community that they had built. So yeah, so basically I've been kind of shadowing Will and working alongside him the past like 6 months or so. And I'm helping produce an event here in London next week. So I'm actually interviewing a bunch of music producers at a music focused members club here in London called Coco. And that'll be kind of an opportunity to introduce me to the Elevation Barn community as one of their facilitators. And then we're going to be running retreats in Ibiza and London throughout the rest of the summer and this year. And I'll be leading those retreats, and that'll be the start of us officially working together.
Beautiful. Well, that's
Yeah.
I feel that based on your story, that definitely aligns with what you're doing. So you'll be just able to serve more and more people through this great thing that Will created. So that's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
I'm really excited about it. I think the community that they've built is really wonderful. I like the methodology. I love the places that they do the retreats in, and I'm excited by this next stage of expansion and what that means, both for the kind of core community and the broader community.
I know you don't like to look too much forward and have a crystal ball, but you probably are envisioning your life in the future. So how does Bradley's life in like 5 years look like?
Yeah, so I see myself as on my email signature for Elevation Barn, it says Global Elevator. So I see myself, running these retreats and empowering people all over the world. We've already started talking a little bit about expanding into Portugal, Brazil, Argentina. So those are places that I have community and would like to, serve. Um, I see myself potentially moving back to Europe, or being between Europe and Bali, which is kind of where I've been spending a lot of my time the last couple of years. I I love traveling. I love having this kind of global backyard, but I also think I really enjoyed living in LA for the best part of a decade, and I'm looking forward to building a home somewhere over the next few years. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited about kind of like you said, serving more people with coaching and with support through Elevation Barn, and also focusing back on music again. I have my own project which I'm literally just putting the final touches on. I'll probably release that later this year, and yeah, serving kind of people in a creative sense as well.
If you look back, what do you think was the biggest failure? Or if you don't like the word failure, you can use the word challenge. And what do you learn from it?
You know how they say the night is darkest before the dawn? There
Yeah.
was a couple of things in my career where I gave up or stopped just at the moment when things were about to ignite. There's one example that comes to mind where I was running an event series in London called Session All Stars, and I had like some of the top musicians in London who would play for Amy Winehouse and Joss Stone and all these different like top artists, and I was running the band, MDing the band, um, bringing in the sound equipment and doing all the promotion and basically running everything, and
Yeah.
it was intense and so the first night we had a great opening night, and then keeping it going, I was basically losing money each week, And it was hard work and quite a lot of stress. And I was in my early 20s. And my dad said to me, why don't you pack it in? It's, it's causing you a lot of stress, whatever. And so I thought, okay, fine. Yeah, maybe he's right. And so the next day, the venue calls me, on the day when it was going to be the event. And they said, we've got a line of people outside for your event. What do you want to do? And it's like, even if I wanted to put it on, I couldn't get the van and the equipment and everything down there in time. And I just said, just have them come in and have drinks at the bar or whatever. There was really nothing I could do about it. And so, yeah, there's been a couple of times like that where sometimes, if you really believe in something and the mission is worth the pursuit, then I think stick with it.
We talked about your routines a little bit, but I didn't want to ask too many questions about meditation and workout because that question is coming. What are some routines you have? It can be morning routine, night routine. And if you can go a little bit more specific, you meditate in the morning. What kind of meditation? How long does it take?
Yeah, sure. I wake up and I do 20 to 30 minutes of meditation every morning. I did TM, which means transcendental meditation, for a long time, the best part of 10 years. And in recent years, I've been practicing mindfulness meditation. I think both are great. TM, they suggest that you do 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon. And I found that I would go in and out of doing that afternoon meditation. And also, they don't recommend that you necessarily do long periods of sitting. And there was a period a couple of years ago or a few years ago where I wanted to go deeper into meditation. And so that's when I learned mindfulness. And, sometimes I'll do an hour. With regards to workouts, I have a very flexible approach to nutrition and to exercise. From what I've seen, most people prefer something more structured. I like having options. I like having flexibility. I like having freedom. Generally, my workouts or my exercise rotates between going to the gym, doing Pilates, and some kind of HIIT training or going for a run. And that's generally what I do. And then if I'm in Bali, I might swim one day, or so if I'm motorbiking, it's usually an all-day thing. But yeah, that's typically my kind of fitness regimen. And does that answer the question?
Yeah, and nutrition-wise, anything that you're like?
I had an experience that was kind of life-changing about like 8, 9 years or so ago. I had a gym membership in LA, and I had a session with a trainer. And I said to him, look, I'm coming to the gym an hour a day, 5 days a week. I don't want to come any more than that, right? But I feel like that should be enough to look like, a magazine model or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm doing all right, but I don't feel like I look that great. And he said, it's not what you're doing, it's about what you're eating. So he put me on a diet essentially for 3 months where I restricted my diet to about 2,200 calories a day, which sounds like a lot, but I'm 6'4", 210-pound guy. So, I need about 3,000 calories a day. So over 3 months, I got pretty lean. And then we kind of like slowly built back up to that 3,000 calorie a day mark. And for 7 years, pretty religiously, I would count calories in my head. And this is what I said about being flexible. I didn't want to restrict. If I was at a wedding, I love desserts. I didn't want to not have the chocolate cake and the cheesecake and whatever, right? So I would just keep a tally and say I went over by, let's say, 2,000 calories. I would know that, over the next few days, I'd have to eat a little bit less to bring myself back to zero.
Yeah.
And I did that religiously for about 7 years. And then when I got to Bali and the food was so good and so cheap, and I just ate like a pig, basically, and I was constantly a week over on my limit. And I just thought, well, I still look pretty good. Let's just see what happens if I stop counting. So I stopped counting, a year and a half ago. And I basically just, keep myself in shape. And I know that, if I need to skip a meal here or there or fast for a couple of days, I do that. And that's basically how I keep it together.
Awesome. And the last question, according to Bradley, how to live a happy and fulfilling life?
Again, if you look back on your life, at the end of life, and you think, okay, what is it that I could have done that would have brought joy and love to myself and to the people around me. And if you feel into that and you're honest with yourself, and at the end of the day, it's only, you are the judge of yourself, right? At
Yeah.
the end of the day. So if you're honest with yourself and you feel into that and you construct a life around those things, I think that's what's going to bring somebody joy and meaning and fulfillment.
Beautiful. Bradley, thank you for your time and thank you for being here. I know you're a very busy guy. If people want to connect with you, if they want to get your coaching or anything you want to share, how can people get
Yeah, the best
a
way
hold?
the best way to reach me is on Instagram, at Creative Ninja, all one word. Otherwise, if you Google my name, Bradley Kohn, you can probably find me online somewhere. But Instagram is kind of how most people find me. And Anatoly, I just want to acknowledge you for the great work that you're doing with your podcast and your other ventures. I'm really grateful that you invited me here. I'm super thrilled that you're part of the Elevation Barn community, and I'm excited to continue to build with you.
Same here, man. I'm really happy that I met you for the retreat and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
Thank you guys for listening, and you guys know where to find us. I'll talk to you next one. Bye bye.